the impact of this school closure, this remote learning that we defaulted to, is going to be impacting for years to come if we don't do something to close the gap. How do we do that?
Resilience is the answer to it. But I think a big mistake that parents think is there's only a set window. It's too late, or it started when he was 3. It's not too late for any of us, or the entire counseling industry would go out of business.
Meghan Trainor. Listen, let me tell you a little about her before we start talking to her. She first made history with her Diamond Certified Smash single, All About That Bass. And the award-winning singer-songwriter has garnered a Grammy Award and achieved 8 multi-platinum singles and 2 platinum albums, sold out 3 world tours, penned multi-platinum hits for peers across pop and country, and received countless industry awards and nominations. Expanding her influence on pop culture, she starred on Fox's hit series The Four, Battle for Stardom, and is currently on the superstar coaching panel of ITV's The Voice UK alongside Sir Tom Jones, will.i.am, and Ollie Murs. Meghan, how are you?
Hi.
How's that for an intro?
That was incredible. That was my dreams. Wow. Yeah. I mean, if you're all listening out there and you don't know, I'm the biggest Dr. Phil fan in the world. So this was like my birthday dreams and a bucket list for me, just to get to talk to you for an hour is pretty sick. And hearing you say all those words, like, my heart just stopped for a minute and now it's back.
Listen, think about that. You've done a lot of stuff.
It's crazy how you can like forget all that too, or forget a lot of it. And like, I mean, here, this is like, it's crazy because like you're my favorite person ever. And they're like, what would you ask Dr. Phil when you get to talk to him? And I'm like, the only thing I could think of is like, hey, how do I be not so critical on myself? Like when you read all that stuff, I just like forget it all. And I go back to like, no, you're not good enough. Be better and work on yourself every single day.
You've been pretty transparent about your feelings, anxiety, depression, the doubts that we started talking about in the beginning. Have people talked to you about that? Having your fans and stuff like that? Because that seems to me to be hugely inspirational. Because people look at you and say, if she can talk about this, deal with this and overcome it, then I can.
Yeah. I just like was uneducated about all of it. And my parents were too. Like when I heard anxiety, I thought people would just be stressed out. And I just didn't know what it could actually physically do to your body. And after the vocal surgeries and I remember it was a month after my vocal surgery, they scheduled an Ellen performance. And I was like, guys, I'm not going to make it. They're like, we'll be okay. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. And I was so scared that in my vocal like training, getting back into it, I had days to get ready. I was bawling my eyes out. And I think it started then. And I started getting the physical feelings where you feel like you want to run to the bathroom, or your back is lit by a flame, or you have a fever and your temperature's fine. Like, you know, those physical things where you're like, it's crippling. Like I can't get through work today because my body's dying on me and I don't know what's going on. So one night I kept being like, there's something wrong with me, but I'll figure it out. And one night after dinner, I thought I was having an allergic reaction, and I went to the emergency room and was like, my throat's closing.
Panic attack?
And they were like, okay, so we've checked you out and this is what we call a panic attack. And I was like, no. If you just look right
yeah, just
there,
look at here.
It's closing. And the sweet guy was so nice to me. He felt so bad because he knew I was just clueless. And then they tried, my brother was the only person that had panic attacks in my family that talked to me about it. He was like, oh, go to the emergency room. You'll be fine. I've had this. Just don't let them give you Xanax. And I was like, okay. And so I went there and was like, I don't want Xanax. I want the lightest form of anything you can do to help me. And they did. They gave me some very light, I don't know what it was, but it worked and it was fine. And after that, I went to every doctor you could think of except you. I could have probably used you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I went to every doctor and was like, please fix me. And a lot of them promised they would, and they couldn't. And then I finally met a psychologist, and he said, your chemicals are like this, and we got to bring you back to here. And it made me feel so much better. And so like, oh, I'm not going crazy. Like, I'm not schizophrenic, because things would start moving. I had like body dissociation or whatever it's called.
Yeah, you get that anxious. People don't realize anxiety is not just a psychological phenomenon. There's a neurological component to it as well.
Yeah.
And the neurotransmitters in your brain get disrupted. And it's like being on a racetrack with no exit ramp. It's just going and going and going, and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. He said stuff that finally made sense. He was like, there's a fire alarm in your head, and it's just going off for like no reason. Like, that was like the best thing he could have ever said to me. And I was like, yes, that's how I feel. He's like, when there's like actual danger in front of you, and that's how intense it gets, your body's telling you that's happening all day long when it's not. And I was like, cool, fix it. What do we do?
Nikki Glaser, one of the funniest female voices in comedy today. You've probably seen her because she's been hitting the clubs for over a decade across the country. She's the host of 3 hit podcasts. She has been honing her shockingly honest, no-holds-barred style of comedy. It takes a different breed of cat to do what you do.
Yes, it does. I do believe that all comedians, and I don't know, I would like to hear your take on this. It comes from a place, at least for me, of not feeling loved. And so I need to perform and hear back constantly validation. Like, we like you. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. It's not like I play a song for 4 minutes and then applause at the end. I need laughs and validation every 5 seconds. And so I think it came from a place, for me at least, of just wanting to be seen, wanting to be loved from strangers anywhere I could get it. And thank God for that, though. Thank God for my low self-esteem as a child.
Well,
it made
let's
me
talk
way
about
out.
that, because there were a lot of reasons that I was really excited about doing this. And one is, I think you're a huge talent, and I think you do a great job on stage. But what I love about you is you have no filter. I kid you not, guys. What you see with Nikki is what you get. She has no edit button and is willing to be totally authentic. It's not like, hey, I'm Miss Glamorous Hollywood. You have a willingness to be completely, shockingly honest about everything. But at the same time, you say, I'm like really insecure and need feedback every 5 seconds, but yet you have the courage to be totally, completely honest. To me, that's a contradiction.
Well, I think now I do have self-esteem now. I had to hit some really low lows during the pandemic that brought me to a realization that I was kind of dependent on stand-up and that validation every night to be complete, to not have to be alone with my thoughts, to feel loved, to feel worthy. And then when it was taken from me, I had to actually kind of look at stuff and do some work. And so now I feel that I'm compelled to go on stage now to share, to make people laugh, to make people feel less alone. Like, my compulsion for doing it is different than when I started, but I do believe that I felt as a child so just innately gross, wrong. Why was I even born? There's nothing special about me. I really hated myself, and I don't know why, but I just did. And I think when I found stand-up, I found something that really I could talk about those dark feelings and make something of them. It was just too dark.
How did you go from feeling like, okay, I don't fit anywhere, I don't have a peer group, I don't fit in, I'm not what I want to be, to having the courage to get in front of an audience and tell your first joke, your first set, your first 2 minutes?
Yeah. Well, to tell you the truth, I was about to die of anorexia. I had just, committed to kind of committing suicide in a really slow way that just took over my life. And I was at school and I was in college. I had convinced my parents I was well enough to leave and go off, and I was just going to die because I didn't know what to do. I had no willingness to be open to my life to eating again because I just didn't see what I was going to live for. I always wanted to be an actress. I wasn't good at acting. I didn't get into theater school. All the things I wanted to be didn't happen for me. I got really good at dieting, and which turned into something that I could not control any longer. And my life was hell, like starving all day and not knowing how to stop, everyone being mad at me. But when I went to college, I was so scary looking. I looked so terribly thin and everyone was so worried about me. I had to create a person. I had to just make myself larger than life so that I could make friends. I didn't want anyone to be worried about me anymore, but I couldn't gain weight. So I'd wear baggy clothes and I was just funny. I just laid into look over here, not here. And then I started hearing, you should be a comedian. And I was just desperate for anything. So I Googled female comedian. I saw some comedians that I just thought, oh my God, they're just being so honest. And I think my problem was I'd never been able to be really honest about the stuff I struggled with. And I thought maybe this is an outlet. And then I ended up being pretty good at it. And it was the first thing that I was like, oh, I have a knack for this. And so the first time I went on stage, I just made a decision. I got to figure out this eating disorder because I finally have something I want to live for. And so I started, I just sought treatment. And then, I got over anorexia, but then it just turned into many other eating disorders that were more manageable and less noticeable over the course of 20 years.
So you just had symptom substitution. You just switched them for other things.
Oh yeah, that's all I do, Dr. Phil. I quit drinking 10 years ago. Then I smoked pot. Then I quit smoking pot. Then I start getting in the food. I was bulimic. I've been, intermittent fasting, which I call adult anorexia. I've tried everything. And then I think when the pandemic hit, that's when I was like, you and then workaholism. I just was doing podcasts and sets every single night. I never was home alone. I was never alone. And when the comedy clubs were taken from me in March 2020, I got desperate. And that's when I really sought out recovery for my suicidal thoughts, my overall depression, and really my eating disorder that I had turned into this very manageable thing that I talked about openly, but really didn't give that honest about. And since then, the recovery of that has opened up this new honesty for me. Cause I think that I always thought I was a very honest person sharing about my sex life. I mean, that's kind of what I'm known for is oh my God, she just talks so openly about her sex life. I don't know. I think that's a rebellion because my parents didn't talk about sex. So that's me going, well, I'm going to get on stage and talk about it. And I was always very scared of sex. I talk about sex all the time in my act, but I didn't lose my virginity till I was 21. I didn't have a boyfriend till I was 24, and then didn't have a boyfriend that didn't have another girlfriend till I was 29. I mean, these are I talk about things that I'm scared of, and but now I actually feel like I can be completely honest now, which is almost scary because you always want something in your back pocket that you're holding on to be like, this is my truth. But I'm kind of I'm not, there's nothing shameful about my life anymore. And if there is, it's okay.
Charlamagne Tha God has also just written a book called Shook One, Anxiety Playing Tricks on Me, and it's been out for just a little while. He is already a New York Times best-selling author. His first book was Black Privilege, and his current book is Shook One.
Yes, sir.
And guys, I've read this book. In fact, I marked stuff up.
Yeah, it looks like a church Bible the way
I know,
you got it marked up.
And I've got things marked all through it. And I got to tell you, I had him on my show. One of the things he said is that he's not an expert. He's just got life experience. But let me tell you, he's used that life experience in a very insightful way. So if you haven't read Shook One, I stand by this book. I recommend it. I think that it is insightful. I think it is inspirational. And I think you will find things in here that will change the way you approach the challenges in your life. And I think you will bitch less and whine less after you read it. Because seriously, you had chances to go lay down and whine about shit, or you could just get up and go do something about it. And you got up and did something about it.
Yeah, that's why I say, you got to use that fear as fuel. You got to use that anxiety as fuel. I had every reason to just give it up, cash it in. But those options of, being broke, sitting under the tree, being in prison or being dead really scared me. And when I started to get in a lot of trouble and, some of those experiences started to happen to me, my father would always say that if you don't change your lifestyle, You know, you're going to end up in one of those three places. So
Yeah.
I was shook to death. You know how they always say smart people learn from their own mistakes, wise people learn from the mistakes of others? I made some mistakes myself, but I saw some of those mistakes really affecting people to the point where I was like, yo, my father was absolutely right. That's why the best advice I can give kids, man, is listen to your elders. Because everything that we could possibly think to do, they've already done.
Tell me about anxiety for you. You said you didn't know anxiety was a thing. You didn't know it was a mental condition, an emotional condition that was treatment worthy. Now that you know, now that you figured it out, looking back, when did it start for you? When was the first time you had something that would qualify?
When I was like 10.
Really?
It was Hurricane Hugo in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. Hurricane Hugo was a Category 5 that hit South Carolina. And at the time, we were living in a single wide trailer. And I remember everybody on our dirt road had to evacuate. We all went to this local elementary school called Whitesville Elementary School. And it was just like listening to all the panic from the adults and, you know, them saying things like they don't know if their trailer's going to be there tomorrow or the house not going to be there or we might not make it through the night. Like, I remember that same feeling, heart beating crazy, shortness of breath, like just you know, man, what's going to happen, you know? And that wasn't even an irrational fear. That was actual fear.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the first time I remember having it. But I mean, I've had it so much throughout my life, man. And it's so weird because I think about times where I used to hide in the woods or hide in the cornfield away from people just because I didn't want to see certain individuals because I was having such bad panic attacks, you know? Or sometimes like I would be having a panic attack and want to be left alone and know that like one of my neighbors might come walking down the road. I might see them from a distance and dart off in the cornfield just to like get away from them.
Dr. Michelle Borba, internationally renowned educator, recognized for her solution-based strategies to strengthening children's character, their resilience, and reducing peer cruelty. The impact of this school closure that we've had, this remote learning that we defaulted to, is going to be impacting for years to come if we don't do something to close the gap. How do we do that?
Well, number one is resilience is the answer to it. But I think a big mistake that parents think is there's only a set window. It's too late, or it started when he was 3. It's not too late for any of us, or the entire counseling industry would go out of business. So first, we add it to the plate. And second of all, we start chunking this whole thing called resilience. When I was writing Thrivers, my goal was to look at 7 traits that are highly correlated to success. Not every kid needs all 7 of those.
Can you tell us the 7?
Oh, sure. It starts with confidence. Confidence is knowing your strengths. And let's help our kid focus more on their strengths as opposed to their weaknesses. 77% of the time, we try to fix the kid as opposed to help them learn where you're going with your strengths. You know, the simplest thing that Emmy Warner discovered? Many of the children who really had extreme adversity in their life had a hobby. And the hobby, I didn't make a difference. It was guitar or books or hiking. They would go to that to decompress. Dr. Phil, when I was interviewing kids and said, what's your hobby? Many of them looked at me absolutely dumbfounded. Who's got time for a hobby? So that's number one. We've got to start with that. Maybe we start being talent scouts. We walk around the house and we look at tuning into what our kids are good at as opposed to what their weaknesses are and start pointing that way.